Welcome to the season finale of Amazin But True, our New York Mets podcast from the New York Post. Jake Brown here alongside former Mets pitcher Nelson Figueroa as the season ends. Here you can still catch Figgy on Pix 11, 7 to 7:30 p.m. You can catch me doing other podcasts here at the New York Post into oblivion as the Jets try to win some games and the Giants try to win some games. You can catch Gangs all here in Blue Rush, but this is it for now. We'll be back soon because there will be a new manager soon. Figgy, we enter Sunday. I get to the ballpark. I'm in Delta Club bathroom and I open Twitter and bang, Buck Showalter tells the media he will not be returning as Mets manager. So we have to react to Buck. We have to put the bow on. I still haven't got confirmation. Is it a 74 win team? Is it a 74 and 87 team or is it a 74 and 88 team? Because no one has said if that suspended game is finalized and if we're finishing at 161 or 162. It's actually bothering me very much. It shouldn't, but it's bothering me that they haven't said that yet. So I'm just going to assume it's 74 and 87 and they're not going to finalize that last game. 74 win underperforming season. We'll talk about that. And David Stearns, Figgy, gets his introductory press conference Monday. We got quite a lot to do today, huh?
No, definitely a lot to do today when, season ends and a new era begins almost immediately. David Stearns presser, of course, talking about as soon as he got done introducing himself and talking about some of his ideas and philosophies, he was going to sit down at his desk and start getting to work on day one, which is, impressive for a guy who's getting to live out his lifelong dream as a Met fan. What would I do as a Met? What was I do as the GM? What would I do as, the guy in charge? We've seen it with Steve Cohen. We see it now with David Stearns. So they're getting people in-house who have Met ties in their heart. So they want to do the right thing. They're going to try and do the right thing. And it's not just by the fans, but because they realize that this organization has been starving for a winning team with some consistency. And at the same time, you're looking at not having a president of baseball operations for 3 years is a very difficult thing.
And
right?
I loved Figgy that he said the bad boy element. I snuck into Shea Stadium sometime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that gave him a little bit of street cred. He wanted to put and then he went to put the polar bear Pete shades on and he said, Pete Alonso will be our first baseman next year on opening day. He said we expect
he's signed under contract. So
I know, but he quickly refuted those, put that out there, and that was the big quote that came out of the presser. But I think he said, all the right things about it. Now he can raise his family, his 2 kids, Mets fans. I thought that was cool. How he snuck in his Shea, how he, knows how this fan base operates, how he's been through the roller coaster. He's one of us. And I think Mets fans like that about Uncle Stevie, who looked absolutely disheveled. I mean, was he on a bender?
Yeah. He hasn't slept.
His collar was like out here. I'm like, did Alex advise you with what you're wearing? What, he really hasn't slept, or he's been drinking or something, because he looked disheveled.
When you have that much money, I guess you can pop 3 collars. He was wearing 3 shirts with collars.
And then he put a blazer over those. I was like, did you? You're a billionaire. You need a fashion consultant.
Yeah, I need something. But going back to Stearns, right, and some of the things that he said, I think one of the biggest things is, yes, the up and down, the roller coaster of being a fan. And even while, working in baseball with the Brewers for 8 years, he never didn't look at the sports section or realize what was going on. And he kind of knows the pulse of what this team and this organization has been through. So I think it's getting people that are in alignment with him. It's not that simple. I know you think, well, everybody wants to be on the same page, right? When you talk about going a different direction, and I hate that freaking term. I hate that term. Whenever they're bringing you in and they're telling you, hey, we want to go in a different direction. Well, the direction I want to go is winning a world championship. I think that's every ball player, every front office guy, every manager's, their goal. So when you say you want to go in a different direction, that's just cliche. And that's for not wanting to say the truth. Just say the truth, man. That pisses me off more than anything, to tell somebody like Buck Showalter, we want to go in a different direction. But yeah, he doesn't want to lose either. He didn't come into the season trying to lose, and he wasn't trying to manage to lose. So I'm not sure where they thought that was going to be a, thumbs up. Okay, I get it. No, he doesn't get it. He was brought here on a 3-year contract. They went 101 games the first year. The second year was over before it started. You're talking about 3 months into the season. You're already talking about breaking it all up and starting over. The plans changed. And I think we've talked about this before, right? With Billy Epler and the 3 different directions we've gone in less than 2 seasons. But it seems to be, it was Buck's job of, getting a winning product out of what was given to him. And he wasn't able to do that. So it was Buck that had to be asked to either step down or, again, get fired. And so it's just a hard thing to see when they talk about looking for a new manager. What are you looking for? And everything he described was Buck Showalter.
So your argument is, if Buck's going, why is Billy Epler still here?
1,000,000%. Because Billy Epler is the one who put this team together. He's the one who made changes throughout the organization. Buck Showalter didn't make any changes throughout the organization. He's in charge. Buck Showalter, as the manager, is in charge of the major league team. That's it. It's like going to Vegas and trying to play someone else's cards, right? Even if you're playing blackjack and you're looking at, hey, what I would do? It's none of your damn business. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. You do what you do with whatever cards are given to you. And that's what happened with Buck Showalter. Yes, on paper in February, the team looked it looked unbeatable, right? They shouldn't have lost a game on paper. And then as you're going through the season, you started out without Verlander and Quintana. Already you lose 2 of your starters that are supposed to be there every 5th day. You have Senga, who has to be off every 6, need 6 days. So now you got to back up everyone. Your 2 younger guys, and Peterson and McGill, never got their feet underneath them until the end of the season, where you're playing against, sometimes lesser talent, whatever it may be. But they didn't step up in the way that we had seen them step up before. And that's why they were being counted on, and they didn't go out and get anybody else. Carrasco was a disaster again, up and down, and then injured as well. So it never caught traction from the starting rotation, only being able to give you 4 to 5 innings max, to the bullpen and guys that you never heard of trying to keep their head above water. And that was only, inevitable that wasn't going to work. You lost Diaz. You didn't replace Diaz. You had guys shift over, and they can only do it for so long. Those things were never addressed. And so Billy Epler is the guy who came in. They won 101 games. They said to Billy Epler, wow, you did such an amazing job. Now we're going to open up the bank book. What would you do to make this team not just a contender, but a World Series favorite? And he did what he thought was right. And we agreed with a lot of the moves. Problem is, just like with analytics, this game isn't played on paper. When things start to happen, how do you make the adjustments? And he never made an adjustment. He sat back and then said, you know what? We don't have enough talent in the minor leagues. Well, there was a problem with that, because you fired all the coaches in the minor leagues. You fired all the lifelong grinders and former ball players and big leaguers and search for more analytics and let the guys get more analytical with their approach to baseball. And that isn't getting it done. I love what David Stearns says. There's no secret sauce. There's no secret formula. There's no magic potion. Okay. Moneyball was something that was different, and it stood out because it was different. Then everybody said, oh my God, we have these same numbers. Let's try and do the same thing. So now when all 29 guys are doing it, it becomes common. It's no longer the rare thing to do. Where we're at now in baseball, yeah, if you somehow could be the Braves and lock up all your young talent in their first year of playing, on the major league team, to a team-friendly deal for 8+ years, go ahead and do that. It doesn't work anywhere else. Have you seen it happen anywhere else, that you get 5 guys who are going to be your mainstays of your organization agreeing to terms way less than market value? I've never heard of this. And yet here we are sitting here going, don't pay Pete Alonso because you don't have to this year. Wait till free agency and then outbid everybody else. So what are you looking for here? There's a catch-22 in philosophy and approach and in execution. The bottom part is the execution comes down to the X's and O's of the game. We know there's no way that Buck Showalter sat there and said that Vogelbach was the right guy to be backing up Pete Alonso or being the DH all season long. That's being fed to him. There's no way. With his own eyes, he can tell you, should the guy be there, should the guy not be there. The way that things were handled, it didn't seem like there was a Buck. There was less Buck involved than there was in year one.
Well, that's reacting there. One, I'm not going to argue that Billy Epler should be out the door. I mean, he should be. He's done a terrible job. 2, I'm fine with this decision. I think you're going in a younger direction. You're going in a different direction. A new president of baseball operations. I just didn't see Buck being a fit for next year. Everything's you're right about what happened. There were injuries, things went wrong. They also underperformed. They also call it Mark Vientos and Daniel Vogelbach still plays every day. I don't know if that's a Buck decision or an Epler. It could be an Epler thing. Who knows? But there were moves that Buck made that, did not work out. And that was one of them. He rides for his guys. He likes his certain players. He likes his veterans. In some ways that didn't work out for him. The team underachieved. And, the blame goes on the manager more times than not. So when you finish with 74 wins in a year, you should have won 96 plus, you're going to get canned. And, he may have not deserved it, but the team underperformed no matter what happened and obstacles he faced. And, you're cleaning up house here. And I think, what has to go, everyone else has to go. I mean, Jeremy Hefner should not be back. I assume that's going to follow here in the coming days that coaches will be let go. Maybe Cora stays. I think Cora was pretty well liked and is a good coach. Maybe he's a manager candidate. Maybe Eric Chavez is a managerial candidate. Where do they go here? That's going to be the question. Do they go with the Craig Counsell approach? Does he leave Milwaukee and follow? Stearns says they're going to cast a wide net from guys who manage and guys who have not. Carlos Beltran, I don't know which one he falls under because he never actually managed, but he was a manager for however many hours it was. Is he a candidate? He's in the organization. Is it Joe Espada? Is it Eric Chavez from the coaching staff? Is it Counsell? This is a huge decision here because, this rotating, revolving doors of managers taking cannot happen anymore. They need to get this right, and they need to hit a home run because this is the manager that has to win a ring for the Mets.
Well, think about it this way, right? When Terry Collins came in, Terry was well liked by everybody in the organization, came in because he knew from the minor league level on up to all the big league guys. They knew him, he knew them. And he was able to make, his moves and the player personnel and what he wanted to shape that team up. And it wasn't until 2015 that all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, Terry Collins is a pretty good manager. Why? Because they were winning. And why were they winning? Because they went out and made all the moves that they needed to make that World Series run, right? But that all goes on the players. So when we sit back here and after 3.5 months of a failed experiment and they decide to blow it all up and you say they came up short, they only won 74 games. They didn't win 74 games with the same team. Lindor hits 30 home runs and 99 RBIs. Pete Alonso hits 45 home runs, 46 home runs, whatever it was, and over 115 RBIs. So you're telling me at the end of the season with these guys putting up these numbers, Brandon Nimmo still had a very successful season, 25 home runs. McNeil was trending upwards. Those veteran guys that they got rid of, Tommy Pham was carrying the team in July and really any game that they had a chance at in June. Tommy Pham was carrying the team. Mark Canha went on to have tremendous success in Milwaukee. So all those guys that they pulled away from, we sat there and said it. What if they were only 6 games out? And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they would have turned it around. But you can't say, oh, they only won 74 games. That team that he got after August was not a team that was supposed to win 96 games.
He got the short end of the stick. There's no doubt about it that the last 2 months he was managing a team that was, it was more managing the Syracuse Mets than the New York Mets, it felt like. So it's a tough break. But once you knew Stearns was going to happen, you knew this was a strong possibility and he'll bring his own guy. And you feel for Buck because clearly he was emotional. They give him the tribute. It's the awkward before the game press conference where, you'll hear, we'll play the quote that, he said it was either, I step aside or, and then he paused to figure out what to say because the other way was fired. It was either they're going to fire me or I step aside. So, me stepping aside means, it's kind of the nice veteran approach to avoiding, them saying you're fired. Like an old guy on NBC who we used to know. So that approach didn't happen. So you feel for him because he was emotional. You see in the dugout, he goes in, he's like jotting something on the lineup. I'm like, bro, the season's over. You're not writing anything. You're hiding your emotion. And you felt like there were some tears flowing. So you feel for him because, Buck's great to the media. He always gives you a fun quote. He's a good manager. And when he came here, I was elated. I think things turned this year. And I just want a fresh slate here. And yeah, it means I want Epler gone, but unfortunately we got to live with that. That's the problem. We got to live with Billy Epler still here.
Yeah, so two things, right? So talk about the emotional support that he got from his players. Lindor was practically in tears talking about Buck being fired. But Pete Alonso was, trying to sit back and think about it. And they said it was really raw. The emotions of it are really raw right now. Didn't want to say if it was a good or a bad move. It's not, and to a man, which I love about players that kind of get it, is it's not their place to say. It's not their place to say. They're getting paid. Whoever's in charge is in charge. They're getting paid to go out there and play. The reason that Buck isn't there is because they didn't play well enough. And Lindor said that, first and foremost. But when you talk about all the intangibles that you need from a manager and this, that, and the other thing, you were describing Buck Showalter all over again. So if you hired him for a 3-year contract, my biggest thing is we're in this age of instantaneous, right? You either have success or you don't. Get rid of them. Let's go to the next guy. Let's go to the next guy. Our attention span can't focus and understand all the nuances of it. So there is a way, not a way, that you could have seen Buck Showalter come back and be that transitional guy, because if it didn't work out, or what if it did work out in year 3? You needed somebody that knows this clubhouse, who knows what happened when it was 100 wins and knows what happened when it was 74 wins, because he knows the good and the bad. Right now, you come in with somebody fresh from the outside, whoever it may be, and it's not about managerial experience. It's about, oh my God, this guy's never managed in New York before, right? He might not be able to handle the media. He might not be able to handle his players. These guys have been through a lot. Brandon Nimmo's been through 4 managers. He's going to have a 5th. And he's only 6 years into his career. That's freaking crazy. So I think one of the things that I harp on, and listen, I'm not an apologist, but man, he just won 101 games, manager of the year for the 4th time. And this year, it just didn't happen. But you can't sit here and say that he was the reason every single time of everything that went wrong. You had what you had. He tried the best that he could. It's 3-year contract, 1 up, 1 down. Let's see what we can do with the next one, with a guy in charge of the whole organization, with the guy who has a vision what this team could be, with all the new prospects that you got. That's what I wanted to see. And if that happens in your you get to May of next year and bam, you want to get rid of them, you had somebody waiting in the wings ready, warming up just in case, because you got it. I felt like you had to at least give him the opportunity. And the opportunity was, hey, listen, no matter what, you're not coming back past next year, and he stepped down, then that's different. But one thing that he said, and he made sure he said it, all that, he said he had like 5 paragraphs written and he only got through the half of the first one. He didn't quit on this team. He didn't quit on this organization or the fans. He wasn't quitting. He wanted to make that very clear. And there's a big difference, right? There's a big difference being asked to step down and him saying, I can't do this job.
Yeah, in some ways, the organization quit on him with the likes of Jonathan Arauz and Danny freaking Mendick, who I hope I never have to utter his name again. Had to utter it over the weekend again, and now I hope it's over. And, that's going to be the key here for Stearns, is organizational depth from top to bottom. And you really saw, and you hate to keep harping back to this, when the Edwin Diaz injury happened, everything, the trickle-down effect was real. The bullpen sucked. They didn't have that closer, that MVP. The atmosphere, as you might overlook it, the trumpets, everything changed when Edwin Diaz went down. Then Verlander goes down. The Scherzer suspension, the Scherzer injury. Scherzer ends up sucking every 5 days. So it was really a trickle-down effect to a 74-win disappointing team that we got 4 months of, and then we got 2 months of the 4A Mets. And we got to, we had some fun storylines. We finally saw Ronnie Mauricio. And now you go into the offseason here with a fresh slate, a new team president. He's a Mets fan. He wants to do what's right for this team. Now he's going to have more money than he's ever had to do it. The question is, what will his approach be? Does he go crazy in free agency? Do they go for Ohtani and Yamamoto? Do they make a trade for Juan Soto? In my mind, that is a no-brainer. Do all you can to get Juan Soto. I would say, do they trade Pete Alonso? Doesn't look like it's going to happen. It's still early, but for him to make that statement and say, I expect him to be our opening day first baseman, means he's either signing extension or he's playing out that last year of the contract. So that, I know, made a lot of fans happy, a lot of fans with a deep sigh of relief. They're already in love with David Stearns for, having Pete Alonso stick around. He's got a lot to do, Figgy. He's got to get 3 starting pitchers. He's got to get 2 to 3 setup men, because Adam Ottavino kind of turned course the other day and said, I got to see what happens here. There's a lot of changes going on. I'm not sure I'm going to come back. I don't think any Met fan is going to lose sleep if Adam Ottavino says, I'm out of here. Because while his numbers ended up being okay, he did
It's a
struggle at
liability
times.
with a guy on base.
Yeah, I mean, good God. I mean, guy steal second, steal third the other night. I'm like, you might as well steal home. I mean, this guy, you steal every base of him. So you need 3 to 4 relievers. You need 3 starting pitchers. And then what do you do with the baby Mets? I think it's foolish if Brett Baty is a starting player next year. I know some people have said, someone on Twitter said to me, I've been too hard on Brett Baty. He's just not a starting player right now. He can't play any good defense, and he can't hit consistently. So I think Ronnie Maurice is going to be fighting for it. Brett Baty will fight for a spot, but you got to get a couple position players, relievers, and 3 starting pitchers, and a manager, and probably a new coaching staff. So good luck to you, David Stearns. There's a lot of work to do, but Figgy, there is a core in place. Yes. You have the best closer arguably in the game. You got a power hitting first baseman. You got, a former batting champion. You have Brandon Nimmo. You have Starling Marte you expect coming back healthy. You now have a franchise catcher who finishes the season with 25 homers after a 2-homer night the other night. So you got your catcher. You got your first baseman, the second baseman, Ronnie third. You got your shortstop. You got Nimmo. You got Marte. There are pieces on offense in place. And a true, real, a guy who became an ace in the ghost forkball. And this guy, it didn't really glow in the dark, but you have your ace. You have a serviceable 3 or 4 in Quintana at a really nice second half of the year when he came back. So there are pieces in place to have success here.
No, without a doubt. And I think that's one of the things that was so attractive to him is, yes, this isn't getting the 2012 Mets. You know what I mean? He's getting this version of Mets team that they have 9 of their 17 prospects that they have in their top 20 are in AA or AAA level. That means they can make the jump to the big leagues. That means that these guys are definitely on the radar for being able to help out this organization, not in the near future. It could be as soon as next year. Those guys playing in the playoffs and the championships down in the Eastern League, you want that kind of success. You want that kind of atmosphere and these guys to play in that because you want them to know that's what they're playing for. That's what they're not playing for exit velocity. They're not playing for freaking on-base percentage. They're not playing for, all the little peripherals to say, oh, can this guy play baseball? You know how I know if a guy can play baseball? When there's standing room only crowd and the game is on the line and he hits a 3-run home run to tie it. That's what Drew Gilbert has done down in the AA playoffs. He's a guy that seems to feed off that energy. Jet Williams had a fantastic year. You got Acuna's little brother who's going to come up. What's really weird is that by the time he probably comes up, he's going to be the older brother. It seems like Acuna doesn't age, and he just went, what did you go, 50 and 75? Mm-hmm. Something of that, 45 and 70, 40 and 75. 40, I mean, yeah. Some kind of ridiculous numbers, and he's only locked up to $160 million contract over 8-9 years. So there's help on the way with the upper levels of the minor league system. Yes, they have to go out and they have to address the pitching. So if you do, I think the Shohei Ohtani thing is all up to Shohei if he wants to stay on the East Coast, on the West Coast, or come to the East Coast. If he's coming to the East Coast, then the Mets are not going to be outbid, right? So that's the bottom line. You figure if you're looking somewhere near that $500 million mark, somewhere near $500 million for a once in a lifetime unicorn, even if he doesn't pitch at the same level again, you're still talking about once in a lifetime unicorn because of the international attention that he's going to gain, and the Mets will be worldwide, selling everywhere. It's a no-brainer that's your investment this year. The Juan Soto trade, well, you just talked about. Brett Baty is kind of a guy that you're on the fence about. Can he play? Does he have the exit velocity? Does he have the peripherals? Sure. Is San Diego an easier place to play? Without a doubt. Manny Machado is looking to opt out of his contract as well. We've heard reports about that. So if you package Brett Baty and 2 other prospects, remember you're only getting Juan Soto as a rental right now. You have to then lock him up. Juan Soto is going to be 25 years old next year, and he's a 6-time All-Star. They had 35 home runs again this year, and a bad year and a down year. Juan Soto is going to take a ton of money to sign as well. Right. So now you're going to have to spend a ton of money on those 2 guys. So now Pete Alonso, we're going back to him. How much is it going to take Pete Alonso? So now you're looking maybe 3 players that you're going to have to lock up for almost $1 billion. $1 billion for 3 players. We just went over $90 million for 2 pitchers, but $1 billion for those 3 players. Now, homegrown Pete Alonso, that's something that you feel the organization has to do. When he said that Pete will be the starting first baseman next year, great move. He didn't say after the trade deadline. right? Because if you're going to get something, you go to a contender, you go get some pieces. Now you have more pieces, and whatever happens, maybe one of these young kids is hitting 30 home runs in the minor leagues. You bring them up, and is it replaceable that easy? No. Is it the heart and soul of this team? Yeah, he has been, but this era is over. This era is over. So now you have to worry about the future. So how much are you willing to spend? We know the pockets are deep as anybody on the planet, but you're supposed to learn from your mistakes. I'm not saying that Soto or Ohtani would be a mistake, but if you're going to get one of them, you're probably not going to get the other, and you're not going to give up resources to get either one.
And I think it's important to not overlook some of the small signings that you might see Stearns do, because a lot of these great teams, it starts from that number 8 depth piece. It starts from that bench bat. So I think what Stearns will do is get those depth guys. We saw the Mets struggle in that department. I hate to keep saying Danny Mendick, but he's not a major league player. So if he can sign a good bench player that can step in, the Mets need guys that could step in and fill voids. They did not have that this year. Whether it was Peterson sucking, McGill sucking, the middle relief sucking, they did not have guys to step in and fill voids and be major league players. And I think Stearns is going to be important across the board to fill those holes that the Mets have, because, we know about the young prospects and what they could do, but there's not a ton of those. There's a few here and there, but there's not a lot, especially on the pitching side. They have some young pitching talent, but not they're, in terms of the rest of the league, they're on the bottom tier, when it comes to across the board pitching talent. And you have 2 major league starting pitchers right now. That's got to get addressed. Pitching wins ball games, and it won't take, $40 million 39-year-olds. It won't take that. But it'll take hitting it right. Well, I think it's a lock. They're getting Yamamoto if they don't get Ohtani, same age as Senga. I really think there's a strong chance he will be a New York Met if he wants to be. And then you got to get it right with those guys, whether it's an Aaron Nola, whether it's you try and get a Kershaw at the back end of his career as the veteran in this rotation, whether it's one of those other guys, Martin Perez, a depth piece. You got to get it right on the pitching side, because offensively, say they do get Soto. Let's just play the what if game. And your team, Figgy, is Alvarez, Alonso, McNeil, Lindor, Mauricio, Soto, Nimmo, Marte, and then whoever's DH, Vientos. If you get a JD Martinez, that's a hell of an offense. I mean, if that ends up being your offense, big what if, hell of an offense. And then it comes down to pitching. So there are only a few of the right moves along with the pitching staff away from being a contender. So the naysayers will say, don't trade for Soto because you're not contending next year. But why not contend? Because if this guy is as smart as he is and he gets it all right and the manager's right, there's no reason to not think the Mets could win, 90 games in 2024.
No, without a doubt. I mean, they're not far off. You're not talking about a team that is spiraling and expiring contracts that they, we know Uncle Stevie is able to absorb anything of that nature. And they did, right? They went out and got rid of all the 40-somethings. They got rid of all the older guys. They got rid of all anybody who wasn't signed past 2024, they got rid of those guys. And it was the smart thing to do at the time because they wanted to get the organization in a better place. That's wonderful. Did nothing for their major league club. And so now when you have the president of baseball ops in place, he has to sit there and start saying the what ifs on every single position of who's available, and not who's available this year in this offseason. It's who's available next year, next year's offseason, right? It's where do you go from there? Like, if somebody's going to go out and trade for Soto, great, but he's going to be a free agent after next year. So if it's only going to be money, then you're going to be able to get Soto when you pay him as a free agent. It's the same thing with Pete Alonso. He plays out the last year of his contract. He's going to go to arbitration and make over $20 million in arbitration. And now it's like, where are we at the end of this? And do we outbid ourselves? Or do we just, lock him up at the end of that contract? So it's not something that has to be number one priority because he's under contract. He will be the starting first baseman for the New York Mets next year. That's what he said. Now, when it comes to all the pitching, it's not a lot out there. Like Blake Snell is out there and he's going to win a Cy Young. Now coming off a Cy Young, he's going to want a lot of money. We haven't seen a lot of guys, once they get the bag, stay that same guy, right? Look at Rodon.
Man, if you Snell, Senga, Quintana, I mean, you're setting yourself up nicely if you pull off a Blake Snell.
Well, what's the problem? It's only money. They'll be able to pull off a Blake Snell, no problem. So you're talking about a young left-hander who's coming off his best year He's done it before. He's been to the World Series. He's the guy that seems like it fit. So why are we even thinking about this? Hader is a guy who's going to be a free agent. So you bring in Hader at the back end.
Bring him too. Let's get them all. Bring me all these guys. Why not?
But what I'm saying is, if you're talking about elite players, right, in their prime still, you're not talking about guys at the end of their career where you're hoping they're still going to be able to do what they did last year, Magic. So you got those two and Ohtani. If it's only just money, and you get those three pieces, that's an absolute success. But you still have to, like you said, it's the little pieces. It's all of the bullpen. I need my AAA depth in my bullpen. Tampa Bay Rays were notorious for this. The reason they made a new rule in the new CBA that you can't send the guy up and down 3 times without then having to designate him for assignment so that other people can get a crack at him. If he's good enough to come up to the big leagues 3 different times, he's good enough to stay in the big leagues. So what the Tampa Bay Rays used to do is our 6th inning guy has to be a 3-pitch pitcher just in case he has to face the lineup more than once. So we're going to have all the 3-pitch guys that are in AAA. They are on a rotating thing. You know what I mean? It was a month. That spot got $666,000, whatever it was, for the minimum at that point. And they just kept plugging in and playing. They didn't care his name. They just cared about what he could do, right? Then the 7th inning guy, then the 8th inning guy. Their closers over the past 4 years of them going into the playoffs, their closer wasn't even on their team. Their closer wasn't on their team. Their closer would be a guy who started out in the minor leagues and he continued to hone his craft. He's throwing 98 to 102, and then they bring him in during the playoffs and nobody's seen him. And I go, who is this guy? So they have done it in a way where baseball is like, hold on, let's slow this down because we know what you guys are doing. You guys aren't slick. You're just rotating these 14 pitchers in the minor leagues, these power arms, and teams don't get to see them. They don't get to scout them, and all they get is arm after arm after arm that it seems like we never heard of these guys, but they're still good enough. So they have to be able to get guys of that caliber to plug in and continue to plug in if something was to go wrong. When Edwin Diaz went down, and it wasn't just like, who are you going to go get at the time? There was nobody that you could really go get. Chapman wound up going to Texas because, they felt like they could make that run. And Chapman was different than Chapman in Kansas City. Kansas City is easy to apparently have saves and under a 1 ERA. And then he got to Texas and it was, here we go. The same old Chapman. He's giving up home runs. He's blowing games. So there's no magic sauce. There's no secret to it. So they just have to have more depth all the way top to bottom. And it's going to be about who the coaching staffs and how they're built and how they're able to get the best out of these players.
We'll close here. Let's just get a state of the Mets. And I'll start with this saying, leaving the ballpark Sunday, there's always next year. Your hope is always next year. And in the bad years, it's the famous Mets. There's always next year, and you have the hope for next year. I'm going to miss the ballpark, man. It was sad leaving on Sunday, be like, damn, this was such a disappointing season. A year after just sitting there quietly after losing 2 out of 3 in the wild card and not even showing life that game. There's another year where it was like, we had all the hope in the world and it went down the toilet, but I'll miss the ballpark. And, as negative as we've been and as bad as it's been after the trade deadline of clearly they punted away the season, I have hope. I believe in David Stearns. I believe Stearns will get this right. This is a guy who is smart. This is a guy who's had success in Milwaukee without all the money in the world. This is a guy who is a Mets fan, who knows this fan base, who is from New York, who knows these streets, who has snuck into Shea Stadium, who has been to games just like we have. And I have all the faith that he will get it right. Do I have all the faith in Billy Epler? No. But Stearns will have the final call, and whatever Billy says does not go. Whatever David says will go. And you could see the trust that Steve Cohen has in him. He says, he'll make the calls. He'll make the managerial call. Cohen is going to go with whatever Stearns goes with. And I think the Mets finally got it right, and they finally have a lead voice atop this front office that could get this thing right. I think there is hope. There is obviously money. There's a beautiful ballpark. There's young talent. You're going to get younger. That is key. You're not going to have 40-year-olds atop the rotation. You have a dominant closer returning. I think the future of this franchise is bright. I think Stearns will get it right at manager. If it's Craig Counsell, great. If it's Carlos Beltran, great. I think that's a great PR move. I think fans would love Beltran. If it's Counsell, great. Fans will love that. He's had success. Look, the Brewers just won the division. Not an easy division. He won the NL Central. So I think Stearns is going to hit it out of the park, but this is where it starts. There is lots to do here, but if you get it right, There's no reason to be like, all right, they won't even be a wild card team next year. Why can't the 2024 Mets win a World Series if it's a home run? So my status of the team, frustrating year, roller coaster year. Honestly, I'm glad it's over. It sucked the life out of me losing games and watching Mendick, out there, watching Arauz out there, watching some of these bums that we had to see. But it took doing that and being a seller and starting fresh to take the next step on this path. And I'm hopeful and I am optimistic, Figgy, about Stearns and about the future of the Mets franchise.
No, I agree with you. And listen, I'm as optimistic as anybody when it comes to there's a nice core in place. When David Stearns comes here, he's looking at it as, he's not getting a blank roster. He's not getting something that's subpar. Yes, they played subpar this year and they tore it all down. But there's, it's like when you renovate a house, there's still good bones to the structure. And there's a lot of pieces in place. It's now his job and his vision of what this thing's going to become. We know what they need. We know how pitching is everything. But we've seen World Series teams win World Series without having 5 aces on their staff. We've seen, bullpens where you didn't know the names of the guys and they still find a way to get the job done. So there's a multitude of ways to attack this. And I think that what I love about it is his vision from seeing it from the Brewers' perspective is that he's done a lot with less. And so having the resources to be able to go to the bank and put the ATM card in and pull money out without having to worry about if there's money in the bank account is going to be key, right? Because now it's about making the right moves and the right fits and the right pieces that are going to give this team not just next year's success. And I think that's what we were looking at for this year's team with Billy Epler saying, this is how we would succeed in 2023. It wasn't necessarily a longevity type thing. And I think he has a vision for this thing to work for a long, long time. And he's been given a long-term contract. He's not on a 2-year deal. I think that's the other thing is seeing not just the managers, but the coaching staffs every 2 years change. It's very difficult for a player to get comfortable or to know. You're going to hear 4 different versions of what it takes to be a big leaguer. You know what I'm saying? Like Brandon Nimmo, I said before, he's going to have 5 different managers in his Mets tenure. And there's always going to be a manager who thinks he should do something a certain way. And it takes players a little while to have the confidence in themselves to be able to get the job done. And it has to be a majority of the time, or else you're really not a big leaguer if it's, 1 out of every, 8th time that you get the job done. So I'm looking forward to what the first move is going to be. I think that's going to be very telling. I'm looking forward to see, what Shohei Ohtani is looking to do. I think that's, a huge piece because of what he brings both on the field, off the field. And when he comes back as a pitcher, you still have another huge weapon. But there are things on the peripherals, like we said, that he has to fill in the cracks. But the foundation is good, right? So the foundation is good. And let's see what he's able to do with what he has in front of him.
It's another year, Figgy, where the offseason is the season for the Mets. It's very much, let's see what they do. And
they've won off seasons, right? We've won the last 2 off seasons, but during the season, it hasn't been able to translate. Also, one last thing. Braves aren't going anywhere. The Braves aren't going anywhere.
Phillies aren't going anywhere.
Phillies aren't going anywhere.
On an upward swing.
The Marlins on the upward swing.
The Nationals even have some promising young talent.
This is what we said from the beginning. The National League East was going to be probably the best division of baseball. Even with the Braves running away with it, you still see that this division for the next few years is going to be very, very tough to not just compete in, but to make it to the playoffs if you don't win the division, because the wild card is one thing, but there's a lot of teams that are in there. We heard, Fangraph said they only had a 12% chance. Well, you know what? I take my chances, especially when guys are under contract and guys are a team has been built to try and win this year. Then if it doesn't work, then you tear it all down. But we'll see what happens. I do think Stearns is the right guy. And I'm excited to see what he's able to do when he has both resources and vision.
Get it right, David Stearns. As an aside here, as the season ends here, the home season ends, one negative here that I want to make sure to point out, it's an absolute disgrace what the Mets are doing to season ticket holders and ticket members as they raise prices after a 4th place season. to the point where they're doing different tiers. And if you're one row behind this person, you're paying less money than them. It's a disgrace. I was talking with a friend of mine who's a season ticket holder at the game yesterday, and the price increase was absolutely astronomical for him. And he's been a season ticket holder for years. So I hope the Mets get this right. It's an absolute shame what they're doing to those diehards. And I have said on this show, and I said it to you, I think season tickets in some ways is a dumb investment. You get money, you get tickets a lot cheaper day of secondary market. But I get the aspect of getting season tickets. You're a fan, you want your tickets locked in. You don't have to worry about day of getting tickets. You know, people stress about that. I don't, just because that's how I live my life when I go to events. Day of, cheapest price. I'm trying to save money. I don't got money like that. But if you have money and you can afford it, great. But it's still an absolute disgrace for them.
What do you mean you don't have money like that? Did you just
like
parlay some?
Yeah, I paid my rent with that. I'm in more debt than the United States of America right now.
Never quit on the heater, bro. Knuckles. That was nice.
Listen, I was on a heater.
That was unreal.
Now I'm back in the toilet. That's how it goes, folks.
That's how it goes.
But yeah, I was on a stretch. It was like $7,000 or $8,000, but still, you cannot do this to the fan base. It's a disgrace. So I know it's probably not going to change, but I want to put that message out there that if you're going to raise these prices, you better bring caviar to their seat. You better, shine their shoes and give them a back massage before the game. Pre-game back massage, something. Because it's a disgrace that a fourth place season that the price went up this much. So, my thoughts are with season ticket holders, and my thoughts and prayers are also with the Wakefield family. Rest in peace of Tim Wakefield. Man. Just horrible news after the dope Kurt Schilling the other day had to tell the world about, him dealing with brain cancer. Days later, after we find that out, he passes away. So Figgy, you pitched at the same, during the same time, right?
Don't say the same era. Don't say the same era.
So there were times you pitched against Tim Wakefield, great pitcher, knuckleballer, a legend. Oh man, just sad to hear that story. We heard about Buck, and literally minutes later, we heard that Tim Wakefield passed. Just sad stuff.
Yeah, really, really sad. I had a catcher that I was with in AAA with the Diamondbacks. His name was Ken Huckabee, and he was trying to make the Red Sox team, and he figured his best bet, because they had just gotten rid of his personal catcher, has signed a 2-year, 3-year deal with the San Francisco Giants and went out that way. And so he was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call Tim Wakefield and I'm going to go catch his bullpens all off season. I'm leaving early. I'm going to get to know this guy. I'm going to try and, be the guy that he says, hey, I need my PC. And this way I'll stay in the big leagues. And he was doing fantastic with him. Got all the way down to the last week of the season. But then they tried to let the starting catcher, Veritek, catch him, and he couldn't catch him very well. And so what they do, the last day of spring training, they traded for that guy to come back and to catch Wakefield, and he didn't get a chance to do it. But Tim Wakefield was a breath of fresh air, a competitor with less than. I know R.A. Dickey used to talk about it all the time, how it revamped his career, and how, somebody like Tim Wakefield gives you hope when you're a guy who's throwing a knuckleball and everybody else is sitting back and the baseball's throwing harder and harder, velocities are going up, and it's always the knuckleball they'll wind up talking about and making on SportsCenter, because how rare it is to see somebody like that. And he was, from all accounts, you hear from everywhere and everything you're seeing all over social media, he's going to be missed. He was beloved, and it's a shame the way that it came out. And we lost him way too soon. So our thoughts and prayers are with his family, of course.
Yeah, man, I love the knuckleball, and that guy was better than anyone. I mean, obviously Necro and there's him, but them two and R.A. Dickey are the three everyone looks to. But man, I wish we saw more knuckleballs in baseball. So rest in peace to Tim Wakefield, and we'll close out this season finale of Amazin But True next. All right, Figgy, thanks everybody for listening to Amazin But True. I'm not going to give the whole spiel. Season's over, but off season, if you want to catch up, New York Post Sports YouTube, wherever you get podcasts, just search for Amazin But True. But I will put on, we thought it'd be funny if it was a walking Mets promotion. So you saw these. I do have the Buck Showalter inspired windbreaker on right now. Fitting, they gave it out, and days later he's fired. And now this was funny. People were laughing when I posted the picture of me with the Mets headband, because they were not built for bald men. It is a weird look on a bald guy. So here we go. You ready for this? Looks like I'm starring in Cobra Kai. How ridiculous does that look right now?
You look like you're a line chef. at some kind of restaurant.
Benny Hanna. Would you like shrimp and steak or chicken and steak, sir?
So
that's that.
So what did you think about the giveaways? Is this the best year of giveaways that you've seen, or no?
It definitely was. Now this the crossbody bag I had trouble putting on. I wore it loud and proud yesterday. I felt like Zach Galifianakis in Hangover rocking this.
No, what it looks like is a training bra on someone who's a triple D.
Well, I do have double D's, so it makes sense. And then of course the corduroy hat was a popular.
Nice touch.
So we were walking Mets promotion. So we got the Ghost Fork Bowl. It said it had to put it under direct light to become glow in the dark.
You've never used glow in the dark products before?
No. Wow. I never used the Chia Pet. We'll see you next year. Trumpet bubble.
Yeah.
We had the one that cursed the Mets season.
That was the one. That's when it started. That Brave series. The Brave series where they lost every game in the last
groin injury because he always had a lady on his lap. Starling Martin Bob.
There it is.
We had the Headless Howie. Can't forget Headless Howie.
We hardly knew you.
Me and all my friends. And the Francisco Lindor grass growing bobblehead, but I never grew the grass. So yes, best season of Mets promotions. I thought they did a good job. Now promote the on-field product next. Let's win some baseball games and keep the good promotions going. My theory didn't happen where it was 15,000. They'll keep 10,000 for later games. That didn't happen. So get to the ballpark early. But yeah, good job. I thought the stadium, Clover Club, they're going to be renovating and making bigger. The Cadillac Club was awesome. My worry is that they're getting a little corporate with these price increases and everything going on in the bigger clubs. Is I hope they don't price out the fan. If they keep sucking, they won't, because tickets are $3. But you hope you don't price out the fan and get too corporate, because that becomes very much like Yankee Stadium. But Figgy, it's been a fun season. We had some good guests this year. And we'll see where the future holds. We do expect the QBC to happen on December 2nd.
Yep.
And Flushing at the hotel there. And then off season, when they hopefully sign Ohtani or Yamamoto and get a new manager. It's been a good year despite the struggle. A lot of ranting, a lot of raving, but it is now over and we can resume our lives.
Well, of course, that makes for a good podcast, right? You have two guys looking at things sometimes from different perspectives, but at the end, we wanted the same thing. We wanted a competitive team, a team that was able to go down to the last week of the season with a chance to make the playoffs. They came a little bit short of that, even with all the randoms that they had there at the end of the season. But you see, hope on the horizon. So I think it's good. They're gonna put a competitive team in place, and whatever that means and how they do it might look a little different than you're used to. It might not be the top three guys in every category you're trying to sign, but I do think that when you're talking about those two upper echelon guys in a Juan Soto and a Shohei Ohtani, that those generational type talent. Blake Snell, we've seen some bad years of Blake Snell, but it looked like he's finally turned the corner and figured out his pitch mix. And I think left-handed, of course, is a commodity, and he'd be great at the top of the rotation. After that, look, David Stearns is going to have to show you his baseball acumen and whatever the staff that's put in place, the analytical staff and the coaching staff and the special assistants to the GM and everybody else that come aboard and say, I think this is the right guy. We'll see what they make fit for next year, and we'll be tuned in. We'll be there for the big major announcements, and then after that we have spring training next year where hope springs eternal, and you just never know what could happen. So I think it was a fun year for we got to see some growth from some of the younger players. We also got to see Pete Alonso continue his savage attack on baseball. You got to remember that they talk about through 5 years, look at where his numbers rank. He's missing 100 games still. And in 100 games, he easily hits 25 home runs. So you think another 25 home runs added on to that number that he has now, and he breaks the all-time record for first 5 years of a career. So, yeah, Pete is a special player, and he deserves to be a Met for life and get paid thusly.
And just go win next year. We had all the expectation in the world to end up to 74 wins. Go win. Whether the show's back or not, it's been fun, and we hope.
Whoa!
You never know.
Hey-oh!
It's been 4 years of this. I don't know. I can't guarantee that it's going to be back. So, if this is it,
You're
it's
already
been a good
saying you
run.
want the Buck Showalter send off right now? What do you want, Jake?
Just
Jesus.
saying, you never know in this business how things are going to go. So, if we are great, and hopefully the Mets will be great again next year. Fun time at the ballpark. Good seeing people out. Thanks to, when we had Tri-State Cadillac on board. Thanks to those who came out for live shows. Thanks for tweeting at Amazin But True, at Jake Brown Radio, at Figgy NY. Follow along on Twitter for potential emergency episodes. Catch up on all old episodes. And, until next time, which we expect would be a manager is next. Enjoy the playoffs. I can't say I'm going to be locked in. The Marlins end up getting in. We'll see. I think it's probably going to be Figgy, something like probably Braves Astros or Braves Rays. I mean, maybe the Orioles go on a run.
I think the Orioles are some kind of special. They just took it to another level in that second half. I mean, the Orioles are definitely going to be there to contend with. Tampa Bay's done it over and over again. They're like the Dodgers, from the National League, where it's got to be their time eventually, that they break through.
But I think the Braves and Dodgers are the cream of the crop, and one of those teams ends up winning the World Series.
Yeah, they're the gold standard. And if you're looking at organizations and how they're built, they've done it two different ways, but they've gotten to the same point where they are the upper echelon. So until we get to that point, kind of still looking up at what could be. Thanks to all the fans. Thanks to everyone who's listened and spread the word about the podcast. Thanks to everyone who runs into Jake and asks for a t-shirt, because there are awesome t-shirts. I still have like 4 or 5 I got to give away. They keep asking me for them.
Well, if you have a black one, Donovan Mitchell Jr. keeps asking me, or Senior. Junior is in the NBA and has 1 or 2 shirts, but Senior wants a black shirt, and I don't think I have any left. So if you have any, give one to him so he stops asking me.
Yeah, no worries. I think I have one still. I got to find where I last left it, but I think one of the other things, of course, is your input. Writing in the comment section. Wanting to be more interactive next year. Wanting to be able maybe to do something where, since we do these things live, open it up like we an Instagram live where people can comment and we can just kind of address certain things right there and then, so you can get your beefs off your chest while they're happening and not wait another week. What was the guy, Vinny from up in Minnesota?
Oh, Jimmy. Yeah. He rescinded his 1-star review, he told me, and changed it to 4. So 4 out of 5. I guess we'll take the upgrade. It's still rather than 5, but good to go from 1.
It's like Uber driver, 4. Right?
Listen, we always try to have fun. If you're gonna rip me, fine. I mean, I'm glad you listen. And you don't like us, so be it. If you see us in person, good people. And we'll have a beer and a cookie sometime. And speaking of cookies, thank God the season's over, because I have just gotten so fat this year. I just ate so much at the ball.
What happened to healthy Jake? What happened to chicken and broccoli Jake?
Those days, I did get broccoli before the show at the supermarket. So I'm gonna get back to healthy living starting today. Well, Giants are on, maybe tomorrow. I'll get back to healthy living, stopping at the ballpark. So thank God for that sake that the season is over, to stop eating. Thanks, everybody, for listening all year to Amazin But True. We'll catch you next time. Stay tuned. And, the Mets did lose Sunday for the finale, but we win here at Amazin But True. So 3-2-1. Let's go,
Mets.
Maybe next year.